Some ads you scroll right past, some actually get you, surprisingly. Why is that? The reason is some of these ads follow timeless principles that you can use when you're making your next ad. There's a reason why when you launch 100 ads, only 1 or 2 of them is actually going to get spent, while the rest are going to get completely ignored. I spent the last decade in performance marketing. I've helped scale companies like Zoe and MVF from, 50, 100 people all the way to 500 people, going into 100 mil plus ARR, some pretty crazy absurd numbers. I'm going to break down 3 psychological principles that you can use in your next ads with examples of top spending ads in ad accounts currently. Every single person scrolling through the feed has a filter, and they decide in a fraction of a second if it's worth spending the time to watch it. You can think about it as your first frame in your video as actually being the thumbnail of your video in a sense. So in Facebook, you can actually edit those thumbnails to be different things, but for the vast majority of people, you're just going to use that first frame. So that first frame and that first 0.5 seconds is so important, and it basically will make or break your video. Think about the last time you actually were scrolling and you stopped at something. It probably actually wasn't an ad. It was probably an organic piece of content, something entertaining, something educational, and you kind of want to hijack off that same principle in your ads, because if your ad really looks like an ad, it's not going to work. Usually what made you stop is something unexpected, something you haven't quite seen before in a unique sort of way. Maybe it was a hook that felt like it was speaking directly to you or about you, or a visual that didn't look like an ad at all, that like pattern interrupt or bait and switch, or all these different things for Facebook and all these other ad platforms to actually promote it to you. So you have to basically compete on that level, and there's a massive difference. Competing for attention means being louder, flashier, more aggressive. Hijacking attention means that you're accessing a different part of the brain that doesn't even get registered, that hooks someone in. Second part, you need to get the emotional buy-in, especially if the AOV of this product is under $100. Then you're tapping into what's called like an impulse buy, and you want to trigger an emotional reaction or investment on why that product matters to them. Once you stop that scroll for 1 to 2 seconds, then you basically have the next few seconds to convince like why I should keep watching. You don't want to immediately go into selling mode, like, oh, here's the product, here's the price, here's the offer. Like, that's boring. You actually want to get the buy-in. Basically, the highest converting ads don't just sell the product directly or at first, they sell the feeling first. Let's go to Speech Blubs, which is a speech therapy app for kids. Here, this is 1.6 million views on their ad, around 25K of spend, and I can see this ad is their #1 spending ad. So let's have a look.
This is how toddlers under 3 go from nonverbal to verbal.
This ad is actually starting with the proof of the app actually working. It's a toddler 3 or under that's actually speaking, holding a cardboard sign so that your brain can process it faster than the child can actually say, but you want to see the payoff of the child actually saying the whole ad. So that's how you get basically that retention past 3 seconds in this specific ad, but you have the text for people who can read basically faster, so they kind of get the input of what's going to happen. If you want any copy, you should put it in the visual of the ad, not in here, because most people will just skip that copy. We have that first hook. It's actually a long hook because it's a kid that's speaking slow. So it's 7 seconds, which is actually very long. But then it basically goes into a before and after. So here we go, day 0, day 20.
Apple, deer, bubbles, bird.
So it plays the video where he's not even talking, he's just playing with a toy, to then him switching. It goes from gray to show where it's actually playing.
Deer, bubbles, cat, bird, cookie.
Try out this.
So you can see, wow, okay, he's just said so many words, and you can basically imagine this is targeting a worried parent that is worried that their kid isn't speaking as much as other kids. And when you see a young kid say so many words, that is what I aspire, maybe my kid, to get to that level. What is this product? So it kind of brings that intrigue basically in that first like shot. Wow, he's speaking so much. And it's not perfect, but that's kind of the whole point. It's actually like UGC, it's just filmed on an iPhone, and then you have the split screen basically before and after. Another very common principle in advertising, you want to be as visual as you possibly can be in the video. Apple, deer. So he's saying so many words. So that video alone, you can see why it's a top spending ad. And they use some of these principles already in the ad. And this isn't by accident. This is actually engineered this way. If you actually understand what's going on, you can deconstruct all of these ads and then use them for your own ads as well. And you can see that taps like really deep into like the parent emotion to be able to see a kid speaking. And if your kid is not speaking, then this is really taps deep into it, like, oh, wow, what is this product? It makes you want to actually find out more without being sold to, in a sense. And I've made so many ads that tap into this principle where basically the viewer feels like they're being understood. I'm like tapping on that pointy problem and then like reinforcing that pointy problem and why they actually need to solve it. The before and after is so common, and that usually taps into like deep emotional psychology and relatability. And then you essentially get them from the 2 to 10 second mark with the segment with the problem. Some people like go deep on the problem, they keep emphasizing the problem, or they mention it, they get it as quickly as possible so then they can go into the solution as quickly as possible as well. There's also other emotional triggers you can use in the ads, so like curiosity, recognition, aspiration, frustration, but it needs to be emotive. It needs to resonate with someone. The emotion, the problem, that all came first, all before the product. You see, the app wasn't even mentioned at all until halfway through the video. And this is how a lot of really good ads are structured. Once you have the emotional buy-in, you then want to tell a story. A story is probably one of the ways that humans communicate idea, basically, since humans have existed, and is one of the most effective ways. And it's really important in all pieces of content. That is something you have to do. You can have really good, solid copywriting fundamentals to do this, but every high converting ad basically tells a story, a transformation a lot of the time that you can basically relate to, or you can link with or understand. And this is where you get into the persuasion to actually sell the product. This is where the transformation happens. And this is a part that's really hard to do, honestly, for a lot of people, to get it very nuanced and specific. You don't need like a 3-minute video to tell a story. It could be like a 15, 20, 30-second video that can tell a story from start to end. When that first frame begins, that's when the story starts. A good example of this is, especially in today's world, your attention is probably pretty sparse, where it might be hard to like focus for a long period of time. You get distracted. But then if you think about like any movie you've seen, those movies are like 2 hours, maybe even 3 sometimes, and you're like locked into that movie for that long. But you can take that same concept and apply it to an ad to make sure that someone is basically locked into that whole video when they're watching it. As soon as you click buy, that is basically the peak happiness, because there's so much expectation. There's all this storytelling that's been done to you. That is the moment of delight in a way. And that happens because of all that storytelling that happened from ad to landing page to buying. It's pretty crazy how all of this fits in together. So let's go through true classics, right? This is their top spending ad, 2.4 million. Let's have a look.
Anytime you see a guy looking good in a plain blank t-shirt, they're not.
Okay, anytime you see a guy looking good in a plain white t-shirt, it starts already with 2 images of guys basically looking good in a t-shirt. So it has like basically starting at the end.
Anytime you see a guy looking good in a plain blank t-shirt, they're not wearing one like this that's loose on the arm.
And it actually goes into a product comparison. Like this is Gymshark actually.
Loose on the arms, baggy on the sides, shows my gyno super easily. Well, I found these fitted shirts. They're tight on the arms, shoulder.
So basically this is like a product comparison. This is probably targeting a buyer who's probably already bought some other gym shirts and wasn't fully happy. But it's like basically in a bedroom on a phone, and it's very visually obvious that it doesn't look good. And then it does look good. And it actually doesn't go that quickly into it. We're already at second 11 before the product gets introduced. But it starts with that promise of you could look this good. And it's very visually obvious because he basically goes through that transformation. And then he talks more about the product and how it fits into lots of different situations. If we look at this company called Myota, this is their top spending ad, 1.2 million.
Probiotics.
No, they don't do that much.
30.
So interview format, one, the blue background already kind of like catches your attention, and it looks more real because you have the highlight effect of the blue background on his face. And it starts with the text, probiotics. Then it goes into credibility. So it starts the story. It's basically going in a fast format of all the questions from an expert answering. And this is a common organic format that they're basically hijacking.
No, there's no evidence behind them. I'm Thomas Gary. I'm co-founder of my...
Also, this is a partnership ad. So it's Myota with Thomas Gurry, which partnership ads perform really well. Highly recommend trying them out.
Yoda, and I am a gut microbiome scientist by training. It's all about feeding your microbiome healthy amounts of fiber.
In what time span?
So that basically goes through like why you should listen to me.
I am a gut microbiome scientist by training. It's all about feeding your microbiome healthy amounts of fiber.
In what time span can you start to notice the positive effects of increased fiber intake?
So you'll see it in several stages. The first stage is pretty much immediate within the next one.
And then it's like, okay, you're credible. You've had some good answers where I've gotten some value from already. Gut is actually something that takes like months to take effect. And it's basically targeting that one pain point of like, maybe I've tried to improve my gut, but I haven't seen any benefits.
In what time span can you
So
start
that's
to
why
notice
that's the
positive
first question, because that's usually the most common objection for this type of product.
effects of increased fiber intake?
So you'll see it in several stages.
And then it goes into it and continues. And then if we go into Photo Room, their top spending ad in the UK, so have a look. So first they actually had a different thumbnail. I don't know if you saw that, but they had a different thumbnail. And then here in the video, it's like, oh, come on the journey with me. They're physically pointing with the hand, like, come. And then it goes into basically directly the product demo. It's like, you have to see this, turn any photo into a video. Oh, okay, there's like intrigue there, curiosity, tapping into that emotion. And then it has the proof. So this is all within 3 seconds. So you can see there's lots of different ways to format it, but the principles are timeless here. They apply to all of these ads.
The AI removes the background for you. It then generates many new backgrounds to choose from.
And it basically goes into like product montage, essentially, of all these different products that's happening, which is pretty cool. Then it has a CTA at the end. So you have to remember to put a CTA as well in the ad. They basically start with the hook. You then have to get either some emotional buy-in. It depends on the product. Emotional buy-in or curiosity on why you should keep watching from the unexpected hook. Then you have to basically have the story or transformation on how it's relatable to that person and how they can see themselves in that. And basically like, this is a no-brainer for me to get. I am in a similar position and I want the same thing. I want to turn my photos into videos. You can boil it down into like just a few words or sentence, all of these ads, but it's basically putting them all together. And then you have the storytelling aspect of taking them on that journey. And this could be a short 15-second one. This could be a 2-minute one. Honestly, if your storytelling is good, it can all work. And then once you have that, you need to make it super obvious and clear that you should take action. And you can take action by clicking on the link and continuing basically on the journey and the story for you to complete, purchase, or take whatever action it is. And honestly, this applies to like so many things. But when you stack all three of these in a very obvious visual way, you know, there's this other principle, show, don't tell, is super important because you can understand a lot more visually than you can audibly or by text in a much faster amount of time. There's that expression, it's like a picture is worth 1,000 words. Use that and show and do not tell. Make it super obvious visually. If you stack all three of these things, this will give you an unfair advantage when you're making ads, and you'll actually make those 1 or 2 top spending ads in the account every single week, every single month, every single quarter. If you can apply these and actually make really good ads, you're gonna crush it. Now you understand the psychology of why certain products and ads actually work and how you can compose it together for your own advantage. Psychology is only really like half the battle. You still have the battle of how you actually test, how you scale, how you deploy. And if you wanna watch a video on someone who's grown 2 unicorns out of 13 and doing it basically solo, bootstrapped with lots of AI systems, you should watch the interview I did with Johan. It was really good. He dropped some real gold. I'll see you there, and thanks for watching.